we're still.
Yeah.
Rec committee, you've got more of a
Ready to go live here. Emily, give me the thumbs up and we're good. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Colonel Ben Bennett. I am the commander of the Wilmington District of the Corps of Engineers. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to sit here today. I've got Mickey on the right. He's one of our regulators, heavily involved in this project. And again, welcome everybody's participation and thank you for our opportunity to participate in this scoping meeting. So I know you don't want to hear from me. He's the guy with all the answers. So I'm going to hand it over to him to get started.
Thank you, Colonel. I too would like to thank everybody and welcome this evening to the North Topsail Beach scoping meeting that the Corps is putting on. The purpose of this public scoping meeting is to solicit comments from you. Tonight's meeting is not a question and answering event. It's basically the Corps of Engineers presenting permits process, discussion on the environmental impact statement to kind of inform the public what our role is, and also to present the actual project itself, which Fran Way, the county or the town's engineer, will be presenting the actual description of the project and kind of go through that process. So I'm going to be the boring part of the program. But the scoping tonight is a way for the Corps to reach out to the public to help us to understand what the significant issues are involved in the town's proposal. And it's not just significant issues, it also helps us to determine what the insignificant issues are. The purpose is not to address everything, in the world related to the project, but the scoping helps us to identify those issues that are relevant as well as those issues that aren't relevant. In terms of, I should probably reintroduce myself as well. My name is Mickey Sugg. I am the chief of the Regulatory Wilmington Field Office. And I would like to point to the slide. Our office had issued a public notice back in March of 11th. And in that notice, it was announcement of this meeting, but it also was a request for comments from the public. As you see on the slide, Jordan Jessup would be the point of contact for you to submit those comments to. And as you see, his email address is up there. So we're looking forward to you providing your comments on what you would like to see addressed in the environmental impact statement document. And I'll get in a little bit more later on what the document is and what it's used for. Also, again, you'll see mine on the second line. You'll see my phone number and email address. So if you have questions about the actual permitting process, the EIS process, things of that nature, feel free to call me directly, and hopefully I can guide, answer your question and guide you through the process. And then the last, you'll see the facebook.com. So this is a live event, but at the same time it's being recorded. So after tonight, you'll be able to go to that address and you'll be able to review it as many times as you want. And hopefully you won't find it that interesting. But also the last line, you'll see our Wilmington District Regulatory website, which will have the public notice that went out, which has a little more detail and some description on the permitting process and what we would do when we receive an application, as well as it has some discussion about our coordination with other agencies.
May I interrupt for a moment? We're having a little audio problem. I have Emily check your microphone.
Okay.
You have to redo all of that.
Yeah.
Just that bottom part.
We're just gonna use this.
Okay, that's
So We
fine.
don't need this.
All right.
Okay.
So where do I
Try
need to?
speaking into that. You could same spot right
Yep.
there and you just talk right into that.
Okay.
microphone.
So where do you want me to start? Where did it go blank?
Hey, do a combo
I played
check.
a couple times, so
Okay.
wherever you left off, it's fine.
All right, so I'll just kind of recap in terms of the actual purpose of this meeting, which I think is probably the more important thing. Again, the purpose of this meeting is not a Q&A session. So if you think you're going to be presenting questions to us on the Facebook, we won't be answering. So it's not that type of interaction. It's basically for us to be presenting the permit process to you to help you better understand what our role is. And what we're looking for from the public is for you to provide us with your comments on what you feel is relevant in relation to what the town is proposing, as well as to help us understand what is not relevant. When we address all the issues at hand in the EIS document, we don't want to try to address every single thing out there. We're trying to pinpoint those things that are truly relevant and significant. So with that said, again, you can point to the slide that has all the addresses and contact information and where you can access our public notice. So one thing I would like to point out, when people say the Corps of Engineers, the Corps actually has, if you want to look at it as two roles. The colonel wears two hats, so to speak. He has his civil work projects in his right hand, and civil works, what they basically do, they oversee, they plan, they design, they implement, they sometimes construct federally funded, partially federally funded projects. In his left hand, he has the regulatory division, where we do not do any planning, we don't do any design work, we don't implement projects, we don't construct projects. We basically are the receiver or the recipient of proposals, whether it's an individual, could be a state agency, or even a federal agency applying for a permit. So when you look at, okay, what would trigger regulatory's involvement in my activity, in the town's activity at this point? So the Corps has two acts that Congress has mandated and given the responsibility to the Corps of Engineers. The first act is the Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1899. So for over 120 years, the Corps of Engineers has had a regulatory component in helping maintain or helping to protect the nation's navigable waters. Obviously, the nation's navigable waters are used for interstate commerce. So when there's a proposal or activity within these waters of the U.S., the Corps of Engineers has the responsibility to oversee what type of impact that activity may have on the navigability of that water. So that's the first act. The second is the Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. And that basically, Congress has developed this law to help restore and maintain the integrity, the biological, physical, and chemical integrity of the nation's waters. And again, when in those two acts, there's definition on how we make the determination what's a navigable water, and there's a definition on how we determine what is waters of the U.S. under Section 404. So in this situation with the town of Topsail Beach, their proposal is within both Section 10 and Section 404 waters. Basically, you're looking at the New River Inlet, the Atlantic Ocean. Those would be both Section 404 and Section 10 water bodies, subject to permitting authority, as well as the adjacent or the surrounding coastal marsh within the inlet complex, any specific activity within those waters would require authorization from our office. So you have those two components. You have the Section 10 and Section 404. So that's why the Corps of Engineers is involved in the town's proposal. So you have an overarching act or law. It's called NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. And both Section 404 and Section 10, they have a responsibility to, or we have a responsibility to ensure those two acts are in compliance with NEPA. NEPA has a formal EIS or environmental impact statement process. And when we are looking at whether that process is triggered or not, there is a definition in helping us to make that determination. What would trigger an EIS is anything that would have a significant effect on the quality of the human environment. That means a whole lot. That's a kind of a hard definition. How do you make that determination? So I'm going to read you exactly what the regs, what the NEPA regs say in making that. It's a two-factor approach. So I'm going to verbatim read it. So, and it is law and regs, so I know it's going to be cumbersome, but just bear with me with that. So in the NEPA regs, it says, in considering whether the effects of the proposed action are significant, agencies shall analyze the potentially affected environment and the degree of those effects of the action. In considering the potentially affected environment, agencies should consider as appropriate to the affected action, the affected area nationally, regionally, or local, and its resources, such as listed species and designated critical habitat under the Endangered Species Act. Significance varies with the setting of the proposed action. For instance, in the case of the site-specific action, significance would usually depend only upon the effects of the local area. So that one factor is the potentially affected environment. The second, in considering the degree of the effects, agencies should consider the following as appropriate to the specific action. One, both short and long-term effects of the proposal. Two, both beneficial and adverse effects. Three, effects on the public health and safety. And four, effects that would violate federal, state, tribal, or local law protecting the environment. I will point out on that last one, the violation of federal, states, and local law protecting the environment. When the North Carolina state law was passed to allow terminal groins, one requirement of that law was that the state would have to prepare a state environmental impact statement. And that would be administered through the North Carolina Division of Coastal Management. So when the town first came to us, and we had some discussions about what the town was proposing, we had some discussions with other interagencies on what the town was proposing, and taking some of the concerns and applying this two-factor approach, which also can include the level of controversy. It could also include potential unknown effects, whether it's on the town side or on Onslow Beach side. So it looks at all these things and tries to make that determination whether an EIS is required or not. So we also looked heavily and coordinate a lot with the state of North Carolina Division of Coastal Management. So in making our decision, we did decide to move forward with the process, with the EIS process, as well as the town approached us and actually was a proponent of moving through the EIS process without having to, because that does save the town a little bit of time in the long run. So with that said, so a determination has been made that an EIS would be required. So what steps did we take after that decision was made. When we are processing processing a proposal through an EIS process, the one key component is to make sure that any decision is made in the most non-biased, most disclosed methodology that we can. So one way of doing that, the core, let me back up, the core in preparing an EIS, and this isn't just Wilmington District, this is nationwide, we really don't have the staff, we don't have the hours, we don't have, so a lot of times don't have the expertise to prepare an EIS. And many decades ago, the Council of Environmental Quality recognized that the Corps doesn't necessarily, or not just the Corps, any federal agency that's preparing an EIS, doesn't have the ability to actually write the EIS document. So CEQ developed an alternative, and that's through the third-party contractor. So when, in most cases, probably 99.9% of the time, in most cases, when an EIS is being proposed and accepted and processed, that third-party contract is initiated. And how that process works, once we make the determination that, yes, this will go through the EIS process, and yes, we'll enact the third-party contract process, we ask the town, in this case, to provide us with a list of contractors who they felt that could prepare the EIS. And with this list of contractors, they have to provide us with each company that's bidding for it has to provide all their qualifications and their expertise in writing a document. And when the town presents their this list, they generally provide who they prefer, if you want to call it, the top of the contractors in priority. So we look at the list that they provided us, and we generally go with the contractor that an applicant wants, unless we feel that there's some outside issues involved. But in this case, we went through the selection, and we selected Dow Cordy and Associates to be the third-party contractor. So Dow Cordy, what they will be doing, they will be actually writing the document, preparing the document at our direction, being paid by the applicant, in this case, the town of North Topsail Beach. When you have a third-party contractor getting paid by the applicant, there's always the perception, or sometimes there might be some dialogue between the applicant and the contractor, and it might be posed as a more biased manner. So there are precautions or steps that we put in place to help eliminate those biases. And one way to do that is we have what we call a processing agreement that outlines the responsibilities of the third-party contractor and outlines limitations and restrictions between the town and the contractor. Again, the third-party contractor is working for the Corps of Engineers at our direction. So we're heavily involved in the preparation of the EIS document. So now the next question is, what is EIS document? Why do you need comments from us to prepare an EIS document? I will start by saying what is not an EIS document. When the EIS is prepared and finalized, one thing it is not a permit decision. That document does not make a permit decision. When that's finalized, that doesn't mean that the town or any applicant has the authority to, or the permission to move forward with their project. What the EIS document is, it's a disclosure document that provides a full and fair description or discussion of the impacts. And it provides or it informs decision makers as well as the public. It informs them, one, what the purpose and need of it, in this case, the town's proposal. It will disclose or inform the public and decision makers what the alternative or reasonable alternatives that are being evaluated that could support or could fully success or could satisfy the purpose and need of the town. And what it also will inform all the potential effects that may happen with each one of those alternatives. And it will also include avoidance and minimization measures that would reduce any adverse effects from any of those particular alternatives. So once with that document and with the coordination and the heavy involvement between the Corps and the third-party contractor, we will receive the comments tonight, as well as all the way up to April the 14th. That's the commenting deadline. I probably should have said that earlier. I think I missed saying that. But so your comments tonight, again, on the relevant issues, the issues that you feel that need to be addressed in the document, you have up till April the 14th to provide those to us. Once we receive those comments, and we'll have some more discussion with other agencies in the development of the EIS, Dow Cordy will draft the EIS. We'll be reviewing every single part of that document, as well as our legal team will be reviewing every part of it to make sure we're in compliance of the NEPA law. Once we feel that we're comfortable that we've addressed everything that we can address in the proper manner, we will release that draft EIS back out to the decision makers and the public. So that will give you another opportunity to actually review that draft. And there might be things that you see missing, or maybe things that you don't think are covered well. That will, again, provide the public another chance to provide their comments to us. And that'll be a 45-day commenting period. During that 45-day commenting period, we will hold a public hearing where, and hopefully it'll be live at that time, that will provide the public a chance to voice their position on the project, whether it's for or against. That will be presided officer will be the colonel. So that'll be another opportunity to have a public input and public involvement. And I keep repeating myself, but once we receive all those comments, we'll use those to draft the final EIS document. We will, looking at everything we received from the comments during the 45-day, all of the comments and positions from the public hearing, we will update the draft. And once we feel that it's fulfilled the NEPA requirements, we will release the final EIS document. And it's at that time when we release the final EIS is when the town will actually officially apply for a permit application for a Section 10 and a Section 404 authorization to do their work, what they're proposing to do. That will be a 30-day commenting period. So there will be another opportunity for the public to comment. Once we receive the comments, we go through them, we look at them, we address them. We will have a lot of coordination with other agencies. There'll be a lot of consultation with some of the threatened and endangered species, with essential fish habitat consultation. So there's other roles that we have to, or other requirements that we're going to have to make sure that we're complying with other laws with other agencies. So there will be a lot of coordination with other agencies. They'll be providing their concerns, if they have any, their recommendations. So we take that information, we take the findings, look at the findings of the final EIS. So we take all that information and then we make our permit decision. Our permit decision will be based upon the probable impacts of your proposed action on the public interest. These probable impacts are usually measured with direct impacts of the proposal, indirect impacts of the proposal, and cumulative impacts of the proposal. And when I mention public interest, in the section 404 regulations, there are 22, maybe 23, can't remember, but there are public interest factors that in our permit decision, we have to go through each one of those factors and describe how the town's proposal is going to impact each one of those public interest factors, whether it's in a beneficial way or in a detrimental way. Just to throw out some of those public interest factors would be recreation, aesthetics, would be economics, erosion and accretion, navigation, the general welfare of the people. There would be general environmental impacts, safety. Again, so those are just a couple of the factors that may come into play. I'm not saying that every one of those factors will, because they won't. There'll be some factors that just aren't relevant in the town's proposal. So at the end of the day, our office will be balancing the reasonable benefits with the reasonably foreseeable detriments. So there's a balancing act there. And when we make our permit decision, it will be documented in what we call a record of decision, or ROD. And that's when the colonel will sign that, and that's when the permit would either be issued or not issued. So that, in a nutshell, from beginning to end, I know that's very bureaucratic, and I apologize that, but I think that needed to be said to help y'all understand. I hope there's an understanding of the process. I mean, it's certainly a lot more involved than that. But again, felt the need to just that the public would have an understanding of what the process is. And again, my phone number's up there, so certainly can call me if you have questions, or email me or whatever. So with that said, that's.
Pass it to them. So
Yes, sir.
my two key takeaways that I offer is, one, it is impartial, and it is also transparent. So impartial is, again, we evaluate based on the laws, regulations, and the interests that Mickey outlined. And two, transparent from the standpoint is there's multiple opportunities for you to be aware, the community to be aware, interested parties writ large to be aware, make comments, and receive the feedback. So we do our best to ensure that transparency. And again, really, I think as you work through the process and you get plugged in, we're going to let you know what we know along it. We're not going to hide anything. And again, remain impartial. We will evaluate these things in accordance with the regulations. So those are kind of my two takeaways, and commitment to all parties involved.
Yeah. Thank you for emphasizing that, re-emphasizing that. So with that part of the program, I'm going to pass it over to Fran Way. Fran is the town's engineering consultant, and he's going to give you more of the flashiness of the proposal and give you a good description of what the project is being proposed.
Thanks, Mickey.
Yep.
My name is Fran Way. I'm a coastal engineer with Applied Technology and Management. We're a coastal engineering firm, one of the few in the area that, specialize in beach fill nourishments, as well as coastal structures, including jetties and groins. We're going to go through here to the process, and just to give you a brief background and some of the alternatives and conceptual images. Here we have, this is just kind of just an overview of the New River Inlet Inland Management Master Plan and Project Proposal. Inland Management, the North Topsail Beach has gone through the EIS process. And back in 2009, they had one. That was for the entire 11 miles of shoreline, and they were multifaceted in there. But this area was also in there. And there were things like channel realignment and other things that avoided that terminal groin. But as we get in here, we'll get into that 2009 EIS for this section of shoreline wasn't as successful as anticipated. Next slide, Deb. Here we have the project area for this particular EIS. Again, North Topsail Beach has about 11 miles of shoreline. This is going to focus on the northern, about a mile of shoreline for North Topsail Beach. You also have to the northeast, you have Onslow Beach, that's part of Camp Lejeune. And then we have our New River Inlet that runs through Cedar Bush Cut, and then obviously goes to New River Estuary up into the Jacksonville area. And the Intercoastal Waterway kind of runs parallel behind North Topsail Beach and Onslow Beach. This basically is just the general overview of our study area for this. Next slide, Deb. One of the major issues on the north end of North Topsail Beach is the sandbags. It's about 3,600 feet of sandbags are from here, from the inlet right here, all the way down to including the Topsail Reef Villas. You can see some images, and these are images. Basically, we want a healthy beach and dune system in this area. It has not worked so far, and these bags have done a really good job at protecting that and kind of taking the place of that beach and dune system. But we need a long-term successful management of this area, and that is one of the things, to establish a healthy beach and dune system where the nourished material kind of can stay there, and we get some longevity from that nourished material. It doesn't just wash away. And then, yes, this black line represents the general area where all the sandbags are. Next slide. Sediment transport, we won't get into it in depth, but obviously sediment transport at inlets is very complex, and it does result in highly variable accretion and erosion rates. This area is definitely more on the erosional side, especially over here on the North Topsail Beach side. Here's the Onslow Beach side. Regionally, thank you. Mm-hmm. Regionally, basically the sand moves wherever the waves push it. So the waves can push the sand south, the waves can push the sand north. The sediment transport net, if you add it all up and see where it is going from the northeast to the southwest. And one big indicator is the spit growth on Onslow Beach, and you can see how it grows, and then it'll erode, and then it grows, and so we can kind of tell that sediment transport is going that way in general. But on the inlet shorelines, you have a lot of sand going into the inlet, and some getting back out here on the ebb shoal, and you can see that flood shoal in there. It's very complicated. It's a very complicated process. But basically, within our study area, the sand is going into the inlet, and so even though we have a regional transport pattern that way, basically we're looking at transport into the inlet in our project area. Okay, next slide. There's been significant changes over the last 60 years in this area. I'm not sure you can see this. Well, this is a 1958 aerial, and you can see the shoreline, New River Inlet shoreline has been migrating to the south, and it's kind of been pushing up against the North Topsail Beach shoreline. You can see this is a parcel layer from the 1980s from Onslow County. And you can see that, up there, that the shoreline was seaward of the parcel layer, and now the shoreline is well landward of that parcel line. And this just gives you an indication of kind of long-term processes that we're dealing with here. Okay, next slide. And then just kind of some of the impacts that we've had, and very recently, hurricane storms, high water events. There's Hurricane Matthew, and you can see that these are the sandbags. And the sandbags are doing a really good job of hanging in there, keeping this area, all these structures safe. And then here's a Hurricane Florence. Florence was a big one here, and then they're just high water events that can inundate the area. We're looking at all this. We're taking all this into account, and we really want to just we want a nice, healthy beach and dune system here, and we want to get rid of these sandbags. Okay, next slide. Sand borrow sources. If any coastal structure that we do, whether it's a groin, and it's going, we're looking at a groin here primarily, but even a bulkhead, a seawall, a jetty, you need sand. You can't just put a structure out there and expect it to do all the work. You do need to put sand in there. But we want one of the main goals here is to increase that longevity of the beach fill. And the town has experience with several different borrow sources, and we're not going to get into them all because it's more about this. We'll be more focused on the groins, but the upland sand sources, we have truck hauls. There are a few dredge spoil islands along the intercoastal waterway that have some material that's marginally compatible. New River Inlet, and then there's an offshore bar area, and then we have some of the New River intercoastal waterway areas. So the town has been trying, using all of these sources as best they can to keep this shoreline and all the shorelines healthy. And we're just trying to kind of optimize that. Okay, next slide, Deb. Okay, just a little bit about groin versus jetty. A few groins are basically to keep sand on the beach, and they're developed to help maintain a beach, a healthy beach. While jetties, their primary purpose is navigation. Jetties are usually much longer than groins. The groins in North Carolina, we have the Oregon Inlet Terminal groin, and the terminal is at the end of an island. You can barely even see it, but it's right there. And it's actually kind of a good design where a terminal groin, you don't really want it. It shouldn't really stick out that much, as opposed to jetties. And these are the Masonboro Inlet jetties to the south of here. They're about 3,600 feet long, and they extend a lot deeper into the water, and they can interrupt sediment transport processes a lot more. Besides the Oregon Inlet Terminal groin, you have the Fort Macon Terminal groin. It's been there for a while. It's been working well. And then the Bald Head Island Terminal groin that just got put in a few years ago, and that's about 1,300 feet long. And so that basically the groin versus jetty, that's kind of just a general overview on the differences. Deb, next slide. Thanks. Now we just talk about kind of the updrift, downdrift effects of groins. And there's usually, you can see that sawtooth pattern where the sand is where is kind of creates that sawtooth pattern. Over here, you have the Bald Head Island geotube groins, and you can kind of see the sawtooth pattern here of these groins that are still there today. And you can tell by this signature that the net sediment transport is from the south to the north. Okay, next slide, please. The alternatives that we're going to go over in the EIS, we have no action, which is almost status quo when the Corps uses the word no action. So there is some nourishment and things like that, but it's just basically what's been going on in the last 10 years or so. we have abandoned / relocation. The town has experience with this. Just, about 12 or 13 years ago, there were 17 structures that were either removed or demolished up here on this end. There are obviously there's significant costs related to that. And then the benefits, there really aren't many benefits that when we're kind of adding up the costs and the benefits. But that is an alternative we're going to look at. Inlet realignment with beach nourishment only. And the town, I think, was very proactive in this, tried to do this back in 2013, where they did try to realign a channel to kind of promote growth and of this north end. And it did not work. And actually the opposite happened, where the erosion got exacerbated up on the north end. And that was almost, the court coincided with all the sandbags. Went back in 2012 to 2015 when all the sandbags started going in. The 4 and 5 is the terminal groin with beach nourishment. The terminal groin will always have a beach nourishment associated with it. We have an offshore bar area sand source, and then we have the inlet channel, New River Inlet Channel. And those are alternatives 4 and 5 in the EIS. There will be an engineering report that is one of the many appendices in the EIS. And we actually did look at other alternatives conceptually, jetties, channel relocation, that sort of thing. And I'm talking significant channel relocation, something like Mason Inlet relocation project. But for the EIS, these are the 5 main alternatives. Okay, next slide, please. Here is a conceptual image of the groin and fill project that we're looking at here. The black line is the water side part of the terminal groin. It's black. The gray is the beachside terminal groin. The groin, we're looking at around 2,000 feet long, but a lot of that is going to be up here in the upland, so we don't get flanked on the back side. This will be out into the water, and it'll be sheet pile with rock, and then this will be sheet pile back here. And so this will be exposed, and you'll be able to see this, but the gray area of the terminal groin will be, flush with existing grade. The town has, that a lot of people use this area for driving, vehicular access. It's a really wonderful feature where you can get out here on the beach and drive up and down New River Inlet. And we want to keep that. We like that. And so that's going to be very important that we maintain this beach access up here on the beach. This yellow is where the nourishment and the nourishment project, the footprint is going to go about a mile. And, based on the modeling and the engineering analysis, we want to, this is kind of what the nourishment will look like after a year or two, where we've got this fillet right here where it's blocking this material. This actually oblique aerials from 2014 were basically, this was following when the town did their realignment. They put sand here and almost immediately it was right here. The project did not last long at all. And this terminal groin it's going to increase the longevity of this beach fill by at least 2 times. So if this lasted 2 years, we're looking at a 4-year nourishment interval versus all the sand disappearing in 2 years. And we think with that, we can also kind of get a more stable, mature dune system to establish and be there long term. Out here is where the New River Inlet Channel is, and this is where we're getting the sand. And that will be, this usually yields about 600 to 700,000 cubic yards of material. For our project, we're looking at about half of that. So about 300,000. We can keep that with the nourishment of about 4 years. That means that there will be another 300,000 cubic yards for other areas in North Topsail Beach shoreline. So that's another important feature where all the sand is not just going to this mile of shoreline. We're getting sand to other sections of shoreline as well. Okay, next slide, please. Here's some terminal groin alternatives. We Applied Technology, our firm, we kind of picked up with the previous coastal engineering firm. And they had developed some modeling and some alternatives, and we built upon that. So I think that's a good thing, and that there are basically two coastal engineering firms getting involved in this and coming up with a solution. Here's the bar areas that we're looking at, New River Inlet Channel bar areas, and then here are just a few different groin alternatives that were evaluated. And we can go to the next one. I think that's numerical modeling. I'm not going to get into that, but we did. It was a it was a state-of-the-art numerical modeling, Delft 3D. It's hydrodynamics, tides, waves, sediment transport. And we did lots of different channel realignments, no action, beach nourishments, and then all the different groins. You can see sediment transport vectors, just bathymetry, and then comparing bathymetry change from one to another. We did a lot of numerical modeling. It's all documented in the engineering report that's out there, and then there's some other modeling reports out there as well. Okay. I think, but yeah, and so this is just generally I just want to talk about the no action, and this is what I brought up earlier, is that this is just a 1996 era, and you can see all these dots here where there were structures, and between 1996 and about the next 15 years, all those dots are gone. These are the structures that were either relocated or demolished because they would be out on the beach. There's lost tax base, private money lost, public money lost, utility relocation. It's a big issue. And then this is just a photo from just last week, where there's a sunken fishing vessel off of New River Inlet right now. And while the primary component, the primary goal of the groin is to promote, have a healthy beach and dune system, and to have a much longer and much more successful renourishment. A secondary benefit that we're seeing is a more consistent navigation channel and safer navigation. So hopefully you'll see fewer fishing vessels that are just out there. And so that is an important component of this. And obviously that was a secondary component, but it's still very important, because obviously safe navigation is a big issue, and it's a good thing to strive for. Okay, and then I think just one more slide. This is just a general overview of the project. Here's the channel realignment bar area out here in New River Inlet, and then here's the terminal groin, where we have the water side section, the beach section, and then that's kind of the anchor section to prevent any kind of flanking. And then here's kind of the footprint of the nourishment. As I mentioned before, it'll be about 300,000 cubic yards. So there will be another 300,000 cubic yards that can be placed elsewhere on North Topsail Beach shorelines. And kind of this is the general alternative that we're looking at. We're still looking at all the other alternatives, and the whole analysis will kind of bear out what is the final preferred alternative, but that kind of gives you an idea of kind of where we are and where the analysis is. So I think that's it for me.
Okay. Thanks, Fran.
Sure.
So that actually concludes our scoping meeting tonight. I will say again, you've got till April the 14th. Mayor, did you want to?
I do.
So I was just going to introduce the mayor on the town's behalf. Just wanted to say a few things.
Thank you. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out and going through this level of detail with everybody that's watching tonight. Everybody has been very interested in where we are with the alternatives for the issues that we're having with erosion on the New River Inlet. The only thing I would stress to everybody that presented tonight is urgency. We've, as Fran had mentioned, I think we started this serious erosion issue back in, I want to say 2012 with that alignment project. And there's just a lot of issues out there. And the only date that I had heard officially thrown out tonight. I think it was the April 14th date to get comments in to you guys so that you can continue through this EIS work. But if we could generate some type of a proposed timeline so that we know what we're marching towards, then we're all able to better set expectations for the residents and the citizens here in North Topsail Beach. So I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it. I certainly appreciate and understand all the public comment periods, and hopefully folks will be interested and be getting in their comments or suggestions or questions or concerns so that they can be considered through this process. And I know that it takes some time to turn that around, but I would respectfully request some type of a timeline for us to be tracking towards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, concludes our tonight's meeting. Thank you again.